Well, hello and welcome to Zwift Live. This is our weekly racing show for the community. And this week we kick off 3 weeks of coverage for the 10 years of Zwift celebration. And that we're doing that with the Zwift Community Racing Festival. I'm Nathan Guerra, your host. And this week for our feature for the Community Racing Festival, we're going to have none other than Zwift Insider with Seaside Sprint. If you want to check out more information about that, head over to zwift.com/racing for all the information on Zwift Racing Festival. Also, you can check out an awesome article from none other, our co-host Eric Schlange from Zwift Insider. And from what I hear, there are 35 different racing organizations that are involved with 7 weeks of racing, and the community has completely taken over that monthly Z Racing series. Eric, you want to talk a little bit about, well, first of all, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, Nathan.
Yeah, it's awesome
Thanks
to have you here. Yeah, I think it's a great way to actually kick off the Z Racing Community Racing Festival, having you on, because I was talking to you in pre-production a little bit about if you look up anything when it comes to racing, you're looking up the course, you're looking up what bike, what's going on with all of that, you're thinking, okay, I got to find something. You Google, Zwift Insider comes up.
Yeah, it's Google is my friend. Between Google and the 4,400 posts that are on the site, we get a lot of Zwifters reading a lot of stuff. Yeah, and it comes out of my own. I love racing on Zwift myself, and since the beginning, I basically I've had questions, and I've found my own answers to those questions as a racer, and then I share them with everybody else. That's really what that's what a lot of the content on the site boils down to.
Well, let's talk quickly about the Community Racing Festival. I mean, I think this is a pretty cool way to highlight how involved the community is in the racing scene on Zwift and kind of where the racing scene had come from.
Yeah, that's I mean, you were there too. We were organizing races. We would just set a time. We'd rock up to some start banner in Watopia and hopefully all start racing at the same time. Remember, you had to sync your world clocks because people would have their clocks on their PCs 10 seconds off and they'd jump ahead, and it was a total mess. But that's what happens, right? You get 2 riders together and it turns into a race. It was a foregone conclusion when Zwift launched that there'd be races, and then they've actually created the systems to make those races work because the community demanded it.
We'll jump back to that in a minute about the beginnings of how Zwift Insider had kicked off in that respect. Let's talk a little bit though forward, because you started developing, and speaking of development, a little later on, these things that you called rebel routes. And this actually, for those that don't know, the course today was a, in quotes, rebel route. You want to talk about what a rebel route was? And then we'll talk about this Seaside Sprint course.
Yeah. So, I mean, years ago, Zwifters were talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we could create our own routes and not just be limited to what Zwift has created? And this idea of rebel routes came up, that we could create a route and just kind of document what it looks like, where we turn, what the turns look like. And it would be like an unofficial Zwift route. You'd make a Strava segment for it and everything. And I started publishing what I thought were the most compelling rebel routes. I think maybe Watopia's Waistband was the first one I published, which isn't even a route I created. But then Seaside Sprint, I created, I think August 2019 is when I published it. And I made it because I looked at Watopia and I thought, we need a race circuit, kind of a shorter loop, but one that has a sprint segment in it. Because Volcano Circuit's cool, but there's not a sprint segment. And I thought, why don't we make it scenic, have some good ocean views too. And I love the Essies. It incorporates a lot of stuff I like about racing in Watopia. So that's why I made it. But yeah, we've got a lot of rebel routes. I think there's close to 20 now documented on our site, and a bunch of them have been turned into official routes in game 2. I think maybe 10 of them have made their way into the game.
It's a pretty cool route for me personally. I really like this one. I think the first time I raced it, maybe second time, may have been a KISS 100. And you start off from the pens And I did 15 laps, so I got to know this really, really well in that race. And there's a lot of roll through sections that, that initial kick into the SEs, and then we head through the SEs, a lot of rolling terrain, down through the sprint section there with the JW Bridge. And then we go down through the Italian Vision, we hit the dirt, and you can kind of go into attack there too on the dirt section if you want to. A little bit of a kick into the volcano, and then wrap around back onto the bridge or causeway over to the SEs again, and you start all over. It's going to be 3 laps, 21.8 kilometers. Not a ton. I mean, actually for this course though, for the kind of course it is, there is I wouldn't say significant, but enough punchy climbing that you could do something with it because it's so punchy, but you got to have a lot of continuance over the top of those punches, don't you?
Yeah, there's lots of little climbs, no long climbs, so lots of opportunities for attacks, but it's tough to get away and stay away on this course. It's just it's not super attritional. So yeah, I'm going to predict that you might lose 20% of the field by the end of it, but that's about it. But of course, I created it, and I'm a sprinter, so that's why.
I wanted to mention that had something to do with it, actually.
Absolutely did.
This is all about having just enough effort over those punches and then be able to kind of split things up to get rid of those you really need to or want to. And if you can survive, then you can have a nice little downhill sprint, right, Eric?
Absolutely. I love a downhill sprint. And it's going to be really interesting. Today's race, the 2 power-ups I picked for this race are the anvil and the arrow. And those are going to behave really differently in that finishing sprint because you've got a downhill lead in into the sprint. So the anvil is going to boost your speed on that descent, but the arrow is going to keep your speed high on the 12 second sprint across the bridge. So it'll be interesting to see how people use them. I think you're going to see people using the anvil to go fast early, and then people using the arrow to grab those anvil people's wheels and hopefully come around them near the end.
That's a really good tactic, actually, because the anvil is going to run out at the end.
Yeah.
Like it no longer has any use.
Flat.
Yeah, it has no more use. And if you hang on and use the arrow at the right time, it may. That's a good point. I thought anvil, but if you're in the right position, that arrow can get a lot done for you on this course.
Yeah.
Huh. That adds a new factor.
You're going to have to go hard.
It's a totally new factor.
Go hard to grab those guys. Yeah. I think the anvil guys are going to want to go hard early, right? Like probably over that last little climb, you're going to want to just start pushing hard. So the people with the arrow are going to have to chase and hold those wheels if they want any kind of a chance, because that anvil is going to accelerate you quickly. There's a lot of power-ups too, because there's two arches per lap on this. So you're going to have, I think 6 power-ups, something like that. So there will be
throws a lot of factors into it, a ton of opportunity. And that's what I like in Zwift racing, actually, when there's a lot of different opportunities to make something happen. I like dynamic racing for sure. So I want to talk quickly about the beginnings of Zwift Insider, because this week is about highlighting Zwift Insider. We aren't going to have any other interviews besides you this week. A lot of times we do separate interviews, but there's such depth here that we'll be able to kind of go throughout the program about history and bring it in as we talk through the race, I think, because so much of what goes on for racers is also directly in congruence with using the Zwift Insider website. I mean, it's, in my mind, it's the number one website in the world when it comes to anything, when it comes to Zwift racing. Zwift Power's there for results and being able to look at that kind of stuff. But if you need like in-depth, get into racing information and not just rock up and try and roll it, you kind of need to do your homework. And I feel like, on that side of things, if we focus there and not the larger community, because there's so much more for the larger community as well. But how did Zwift Insider grow from a racing perspective from your point of view?
I started racing in late 2015 on Zwift when I first found Zwift, and I had a lot of questions. I wanted to know the routes better. I wanted to know how in-game physics worked. And so I just started diving into that. I started learning the maps really well and started discovering how different bikes and wheels work and figuring out how I could even test that. So it really just grew out of me racing and wanting to answer the questions. And then racers, it kind of snowballed. So I would answer a question and racers would say, yeah, but what about this? And how does this? I just started having more and more questions to answer. So it's grown into this. I've tested every single frame and wheel combination. I've mapped out every route. We've got charts and everything you need, because that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for when I race. Different racers treat races differently, but I'm a guy that likes to have the info. I feel much more comfortable knowing what I'm getting into.
There's kind of three categories then that I hear from there, or at least I see from Zwift Insider. For those who are maybe new to racing or don't understand the use of it, or those who just rock up, I think, you have your course profiles. You can go and check out the course, what the course is all about. You have every single bike in game, if I'm not incorrect here, has been tested with wheels, for climbing, for flats, rolling terrain, for what's best for TTT. I mean, you've got a guide for each and every one of them as far as the bike goes. And then on top of that, you've also developed your own racing series.
Yeah. The tiny races, which interestingly enough, so the A's are just kicking off now, but one of the guys at least signed up here in the A's, his name is Ecor, I think Ecor Morel. He's on BL13. He just won the tiny races this last Saturday in the A's, the Zone 1 A's. So he's going to be my pick for today to race. But he'll be interesting because he's a 1 minute power guy. He's not so much the sprint. Oh, there he is. I'm watching him right now.
We need to jump down into race action.
Tiny races are just.
Sorry, Eric. We're going to jump down in real quickly here, and we'll jump back onto the tiny races in just a moment. But riders are getting out on course. Let's go ahead and jump in. We're in with the category 1. That's what we're going with from here on out. Eric and I have decided that it is going to be called Category 1 Racing. And right from the get-go, what I did see as we were getting ready for this was that BL13, for some reason, have shown up with their whole squad. I mean, there is a massive amount of BL13s in this. And right from the get-go, off the front, it looks like one of the riders is giving it a go.
Yeah, as he should be, right? That's the tactic. So I think we're going to see repeated attacks from BL13. There's actually they've got a couple. Even Morel, he's following that attack. Are they going to do a team TTT off the front? Are they going to do this right now?
I would not be surprised one bit. They're such a good team when it comes to their tactics. We're going to take this left-hand turn. Interesting enough to see that anvil power up being used there at an interesting time. I think that may be Eicher making his way across, but at least two there. We do see it looks like it's going to be Timona Kruger also involved. The two riders here, Joe Lewis on the move on that Tron bike, as you can see. Now, highlighting the Tron. Wow, he has lit this up. Look at how this is stretched out right now. This is going to put the hurt on, that's for sure. And the rest of BL13, they can just sit in here, Eric.
Yeah, the early orange numbers off the front, stretching it out, and it looks like maybe about half their team is off the front, and the other four, sit in the draft, make everybody else work for them. Classic race tactic. Yeah,
now we're in with Phil Utley. It looks like he's going up and over the top. I think Joe was done with that one. I think this is just going to be counterattack after counterattack coming from BL13. I actually had a good conversation last week with one of their team members, and one of the highlights, from Matthew Spooner that we had on last week, as they were a highlight club for us and team for us. They said that disrupting has been from the get-go of BL13. They may not always have the absolute fastest riders, but they definitely show up prepared for any race with a tactic and a plan. And I think one of the main men for that, Daz Carter, is here in and amongst the crew, but it looks like they are going to get pulled back in. Now up and over the top, though, it's going to be Ronald Vanderlaar. He's also somebody that we recently had a conversation with about race tax, and we saw him now with an anvil. Talk about the anvil here. It's gone through a couple of changes over the years. You'd know all about those, wouldn't you, Eric?
Yeah, they've tweaked it numerous times. I kind of like the old anvil that people could use at the wrong time and totally mess up their race. Used to be, because it just adds weight to you as a racer, and people used to trigger it on uphills on accident, and it would make it really hard for them to climb. But now they've made it a very safe anvil, so it's only active if you're on a 1.5% downhill or more. So as soon as you hit flat ground or an uphill, even if your anvil is going, it's not doing anything to your weight. So it's really, it's made to make you go fast.
You would prefer if the anvil like stayed heavy and you had to like use it at. Would you like the middle ground? Like maybe it stayed 15 seconds, not 30, and it would then also be active when it was on flat or uphill, and so you had to use it because it was really long also before, right? So it was like 30 seconds, and you had it uphill, downhill, whatever, just increase your weight outright.
Yeah, it was a little tricky at 30 seconds because you had to think about what terrain you were going to be going over in the next 30 seconds. So yeah, I would support a 15-second agnostic down anvil that just went no matter what the terrain was.
Agnostic. It has no opinions. Yeah. This anvil has no opinion.
It just adds weight to you no matter what's going on.
So what do you think about this section of course here with this downhill? You know, coming through the dirt, I've seen a lot of people make this exact move, actually. We're seeing off the front here, it is going to be your pick, actually, Iker Morel. Now, rolling through as best as he can, high wattage for a little bit there for a moment. You know, I'm wondering what's your take on this kind of a move through the dirt? I do feel like it is a good way to try and make something happen. That actually may be Philip Utley, if I'm not incorrect here.
Morel's in the main pack because I'm watching him, but he's got it's a teammate up front. I like the dirt for a move. I call that the dirty sorpresa. It's a lot more painful the other direction in the uphill, but you can definitely make a move in it on the downhill. I remember years ago, I think it was Cy Richardson from GCN that did a Zwift race that he was a part of, and they broadcasted it and made a really big deal out of it. And he got dropped on that descent because it was so dusty. He couldn't see that the riders were attacking up ahead of him, and he got gapped and never came back. So I wish it was dustier.
It slows down. And you know, that's one thing I think a lot of people don't know, that if you see dust, you're going slower. And that's actually the main way. I mean, I can tell the difference between the road structures pretty well as whether or not I'm on, you know, the gravel that acts like pavement or I'm on actual dirt. But if you're unsure, the main way you can tell is it kicking up dust? Because if it is, you're on dirt.
Yeah. Yeah, the dirt has higher rolling resistance. So it's basically like you're on a false flat. So anytime you're on dirt, it's a place where you can attack, where bigger watts are going to make a bigger difference.
Well, Joe Lewis here, 551 watts, 7.3 watts per kilogram. Nice little attack. Big watts are going to be making a big difference there as Jay Henry from Draft looks to try and close things down. Sitting third wheel, it looks like it's going to be Andres Broberg from the, he's a Galaxy sweeper, but today I don't think he's just sweeping. Espen's there as well. Trento and Phil Utley sitting in sixth place right now currently. But I think Joe is giving it a go here at 6. I don't know. Here's the thing. This section of course, let's talk a little bit about this. My main thing with this section of course is I tend not to go early necessarily like Joe did unless I'm fairly confident that I can punch all the way over the top. Because unless you actually go from right here into a full gas downhill sprint kind of, you're going to get rolled up on pretty quick at about 50 to 52 kilometers per hour from a group that's behind if they don't sit up necessarily. So looks like Joe's got that though. He kicks into 6, and this is where right about now as it kicks down into that 5%, this is where I would put the most pressure on for a moment and then roll through with some threshold efforts to try and keep some speed through here. And you can really gain some time on a pack that's not super motivated. You can see that it is going out by about a second or so as they're only, now you do see Kruger heading to the front at 7 as I think he sees this being a danger situation for Lewis getting away.
Yeah, it's pretty common on this course to see one or two riders gapping the front through that arch in the volcano, and then to see him get pulled back basically before we even hit this bridge here. It's a good attack spot though. Interestingly, when I first created this as a rebel route, the finish line was that volcano arch. It wasn't the JWB sprint arch, just because I like the finish in the volcano. It's a real technical finish that I never win on. I don't know why I like it. The JWB sprint's a much better finish for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You like the other one, the other way better, but it's not to your advantage. You like a challenge, it sounds like, perhaps. But
I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
so the difference being there is that it would be a two-tier sprint essentially, where you kind of kick, hold on, and then try and cup it over the top if you are finishing in the volcano. But on this AW sprint, let's speak a little bit to the difference between those two ways of having to finish this out. I mean, this one is not. It's not as more technical about how you use your draft, how you set yourself up in the pack. I mean, you've really got to be extremely attentive to using that downhill, and timing is going to be how can I say, a little bit more of. I mean, it's very in the moment for sure on an uphill, but you can kind of be a little bit more off on your timing on an uphill sprint, like if it were on that other section. But with the downhill sprint like this, it's going to be usually won, if it's all together, by less than a tenth of a second, even a hundredth of a second, with how high these speeds are going to be. So if you want that, you're going to really need to time things absolutely perfectly for the most amount of speed with that anvil or with that arrow power up. It's going to be interesting to see how these riders play this then.
Yeah, it's really a sprint that you need to know. You need to have practiced it, because of that. You've got the little kicker leading into it, then you've got the descent, then you've got the hairpin turn, knowing how much flat you have after it. It's one that you can't just rock up to and do well at, I don't think.
Opinions on bikes today. I mean, speaking of everything that Zwift Insider has done with the testing of the bikes, I've noticed that these Pinarellos have been showing up a lot lately. Can you speak to exactly why a rider like Samuel here, from one of the best teams we know of in game, BL13, why would he be picking this Dogma right now?
So the Dogma is the newest frame in game, and it is, I would say, the best all-arounder when you pair it with disc wheels, like all these riders are. So you pair it with the fastest disc wheels, the DT Swiss disc, and what it does is it loses just a pinch of time against the fastest, the most aero frame, which is like the S-Works Venge, and there's 4 frames that are all basically the most aero, but it loses just a hair of time, but then it gains it's a much better climber than those. So if you're on a course that has any sort of climbing on it, I think you just go with the Pinarello, because it gives you a bit of an advantage on those climbs, and it's a negligible loss on descents.
Yeah, it has been my go-to as of recently. And, with the addition, we have a little bit of attack here again from Mountain Vandalar. We see him do something very similar to this in ZRL round number 5, actually, race number 5 in round number 1 this year. He did do a walk-away effort on that new course up the Mayan KOM, actually. We'll see if he can pull something off again. This is a guy who can go hard for quite a long time. So, and being an attack that's about at the halfway point, and maybe at a point where everybody's kind of getting tired of covering things, Ronald may be able to pull this off. I've seen him do it before. So nice little move here from Ronald. Now, one thing I definitely like, Eric, about the addition of the Pinarello is I think that there's just enough bikes now that before it was like S-Works Venge or Tron or a Climber. And now I feel like we can throw 3, 4, 5 different bikes into a conversation, depending now at this point, or at least different setups on them as well, where now I'm like, well, maybe I'll go with the Pinarello and the die cut dish and not the disc. Or, it's like you've got a few more choices, whereas before I felt like, or at least I'd really like your opinion on this, because you've done all the homework here and you probably have a lot more scope on how all these bikes fit amongst each other. But my take is we kind of do have a little more breadth of it's not like you have necessarily a garage of 10, but 4, maybe 5 bikes to pick from at this point, depending on the course.
Yeah, you can. I think of it as trading seconds. So when I test bikes, I test them bikes. On. Yeah, I've tasted bikes too, but not on purpose. When I test them on for flat performance and for climb performance, and I time them. And the charts I have, when I look at them, I think, well, if I go with a lighter bike, how many seconds am I gaining on a climb versus losing in the flats? And if it's a race where climbing matters and I can trade off 2 seconds of flat performance for 2 seconds of climb performance, well, that's a no-brainer to me, because I know the climbs are where I'm going to be pushing the hardest. So having an advantage where my effort's highest is a no-brainer.
It's a really good
and even
point.
if
I want to highlight that real quickly, Eric, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, when they're picking a bike, will pick a bike just looking at the course without thinking about when the race moves are actually going to be the highest probability of
Yeah.
happening. And so therefore they'll pick a bike because, like, well, it's mostly flat and then this one climb, or it's mostly flat and then, and really it's like, well, but that one spot might be where you need the bike the most. So it's a good point there.
Yeah, that's what I think about. I think if I'm going to get dropped on this course, where am I going to get dropped? Where's my highest probability? And it's always going to be on the climbs for me. That's how I am. So yeah, more and more I tend toward a climbing bike, and I'll even trade. I might trade, 2 seconds advantage on a climb for 1 second, I might lose 5 seconds in my aero performance just to gain 2 seconds in climbing. Because it's worth it to me, because I don't struggle on flats to stay in the group. Typically, I struggle on the climbs. So yeah, and there are quite a few bikes. One of our most popular charts is it's the Tron versus top performers chart, and it's all the top performing wheels and frames plotted against the Tron bike. For their performance, and you can kind of see the curve of the best performing combinations, and it's cool because you can follow that curve and say, oh, I want a little more climbing advantage today, or I want a little more aero advantage today, and it spells out for you what frame to grab. And like you said, yeah, there are 4 or 5 combinations, and the Tron is in there. Tron's kind of in the middle. You can get a better climber than the Tron. You can get a more aero setup than the Tron. Just depends on what you're looking for, where you're looking for an advantage.
That's a great point, actually, about, or at least the way that you developed that specific article, because it really served to what you see the most searches probably for. I would think that you saw a lot of stats around Tron bike, Tron bike, Tron bike, Tron bike. So like you were like, well, everybody's picking this Tron because it was one of the best all-arounders. So it's a great comparison bike, isn't it? To like compare all the rest of it kind of sets a plumb line for everybody to say, well, which way do you want to go from here? Because it's such a middle plot line with that Tron bike.
Yeah, it's a great all around performer, and really until this year when Zwift released the new Pinarello, and there was another frame that I forget because the Pinarello kind of beat it, but there was another frame right before that where you actually had contenders that you could say beat the Tron as all-arounders. Before that, you didn't quite, but now you do. So that's why you're seeing so few Trons in these top-level races, where before it was a sea of Trons.
Real quickly, I want to do a little bit of a comparison between a couple of riders that have been the main instigators so far in this race, and that would be our buddy Ronald Vandelar off the front here at this point. From BL13 and Jason Henry. Now, Ronald is definitely a rider. He actually said it in his interview last week, a couple weeks ago, that he was interested in getting away and not a sprint. And you can see exactly why. But we've got a rider like Jason Henry here from the draft who's been on the front constantly, probably a little bit frustrated, I would think, with the reality that he's just dragging along a lot of BL13 riders. But with a guy who's got 16.8 watts per kilogram for 15 seconds, as long as he can bring it back close enough and gets a little bit of help, this guy would be pretty confident in a sprint, is probably happy to do a little bit of work.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a guy who needs to be there in the mix in the final. He's not going to go long, but yeah, if he can do a little bit of work to help pull this back, because we got a gap with Vandelar here. He's keeping it away with the high threshold effort.
Yeah, actually, he's got a really good gap. It went out to about 15 seconds at one point. Now the pack is getting a little bit more worried about this. We do see Hallisted now making a little bit of a move to the front. So he just kicked up into 6 watts per kilogram. So trying to get that slingshot going. I use that term a lot, slingshot, Does that mean anything to you, Eric, when I say that slingshot? Because you can kind of instigate this like shooting forward over and over again that can almost cause a snowball, but you got to get the pack to work with you on it a little bit.
Yeah, it works if everyone's doing it. Sitting in the draft, hitting your power hard so that you get your speed boosted while you have that draft advantage, and then slingshotting around the front rider can boost the speed of the whole pack. But if you only do that once and nobody else does it, it doesn't really do much good. So yeah, if you can repeatedly do that every 5 seconds, that's a great setup and a great way to work together to pull somebody back.
Well, we are seeing the Dragons now making way to the front. It's going to be Kruger, Anderson, Henry, Hordvik, Trento's there as well. Taft now, Ravelson. This is 11 seconds. I'm not sure that this is going to stick. This is a lot of speed coming over the top here. It's going to, the next, I'd say 1 to 2K is going to tell a lot, specifically because how much speed they carry through here. I always had a little bit of like frustration at this specific section of course, not because I don't like it, other than if I'm off the front, it always brings back a lot of time. And it's about having the continuance from this point forward and just kind of gritting it and saying they're going to bring back something. But if they stop being motivated, and if BL13 heads to the front and slows this down, we may see a situation where Ronald can actually stay away. But it's going to be difficult here, as we do see a couple of riders now starting to make some moves to the front using that roll through speed. Will it be Comfort quickly, though? Taft now up into 4.7. Philip Wootley now jumping on that. We could have a situation where BL13 actually jumps onto some of these counters to try and go across with them, or at least cover and kill. It does look like, well, interesting enough, one of the BL13 riders, is he slowing things down with Taft, or is he actually speeding things up? This may be a setup to counter the catch, I would think. I mean, otherwise, this is just chasing down a teammate.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to see. Sometimes you miss the jump a little bit. You accidentally go ahead of the guy, but my guess is they're not gonna try to pull Vandelar back. It's really a beautiful situation for them because they've got this diversity of riders where they've got the diesel off the front that can make the pack work, and then they've got sprinters that can sit in, and it's going to be interesting to see who on BL13, if anyone, is the card that gets picked from the deck for the win on the day.
He still got 7 seconds.
On how the rest
Eric.
of the pack performs. Yeah, he's still got. That's a solid gap. Who's gonna work to pull it back this late in the race and possibly fry their legs is the next question.
Okay, now 7 seconds. It's holding steady. 6.8 now at this point. They are slowing down a little bit in that pack. 4.5 watts per kilogram. I am seeing Trento, though, making his way to the front. Now it's a big kick here from Trento, but it's not orange numbers. It's 7.5, 7.3. It's big, but it's not going to cause separation between him and the pack. And the pack is responding, I think, is the moment that Vandelar needs to start thinking about what's he going to do when the catch is made. Perhaps a couple of riders start working with him, but I think that whole pack is going to get pulled back in with him. Will BL13 counter is going to be the question into the uphill double kick. If anybody's been sitting in and reserving anything, somebody could make a serious move, because I think that pack is going to be on the rivet a little bit as soon as they make this catch.
Yeah, I would agree. And my guess is BL13 already has a plan for that. Hey, if Vandelar gets caught, who's jumping next? Somebody with similar power, really strong, I'd say 5-minute power that can stay off the front, possibly. That'd be ideal. What we really need is a second team in here with a couple of domestiques who are willing to just bury themselves for their sprinters to pull it all back and keep the attacks going. But yeah, here we go. We're catching Vandelar.
Making the catch now, Anderson, Swedish Zwifters on the front. Henry there again from draft, but I think the draft rider's not going to be interested in a breakaway. He wants a sprint situation, is my feeling. Will there be a counter attack? Yeah. Now, there is another power-up. The last power-up to be collected is coming up. What you want is going to be, interesting. We're seeing somebody using arrow. Maybe they want a anvil. I mean, if you're using an arrow at this point,
be.
that means you want an anvil, isn't it? Daz Carter now making his way to the front, but the last power-up about to be collected. Seems like a lot of people are happy with their power-up at this point. Now another attack here coming in from, who's that going to be? I have a prediction that perhaps, is it Joe Lewis? No, Daz Carter. Daz Carter on the attack with the arrow power-up being chased quickly by Kruger.
Yeah, I wonder, like, you know, what do you want, the anvil or do you want the arrow? It might depend on your own body weight. If you're a lightweight rider, I think maybe having the anvil would be the biggest help to you to keep your speed up on that descent. But a bigger rider who's just going to be pouring out big watts, give me the arrow power up and help me cut through the wind as quickly as possible.
Oh no! The use of I mean, that's all in. That is all in from Samuel. I mean, this is like full commitment. He just used his anvil on that downhill. 3.2K to go. These three off the front. And he can't slow. He just went to 3 watts per kilogram. He's got to go to 6. Okay, he's back up to 6 now. Is the chase on? 4 seconds. I think this might stick if they work well together. They got 2 BL13s in here with one of the Dragons. I think this might work. They're going to have to really ramp things up behind it. Does look like that's coming, though. It's going to be Taft now up in the 6.5. John Class is there as well. We've got a kind of a drag back in now. Oh, my gosh. Daz Carter just used his arrow as well, kicking up into 6 watts per kilogram, trying to keep this separation. He's all in on this move.
Yeah, they're committed, these two. They're trying to stay away as well as they can. And it's gonna be a battle. Just a few seconds separating them all.
Utley, nice move from Utley here. Phil Utley now holding right where he needs to. Are they going to back off? If they don't close this right now Henry may be over the top. This is a great situation for Henry. Yep, there it goes. Right up and over the top, up in the 6.5 watts per kilogram. He's going to make the connection. And if he can get away now at this point, but I think, again, he's just trying to slingshot. Watch. We'll see whether or not he continues on. I have a feeling that he might back off. No, I might be incorrect. Now it's going to be Ronald Vandelar, guy who doesn't have a sprint, saying, no, I'm going to give it a go now again. BL13 are being relentless right now.
Do it, Vandelar. Keep that power up. I love it. He's in here to suffer today.
BL13 to the front. Grant Womack now. We haven't seen him at all, actually. Using a little bit of a steering, it looks like, making his way around course. And I think Womack, actually, no, is that going to be Lewis? Vandelar? Lewis? It's actually going to be Lewis now, making his way around. I think we've got a couple of riders up ahead that may be lapped riders, perhaps, in the rider nearby list. Apologies about that, everybody. But now it's going to be Joe Lewis here, making his way for an attack. And behind him, Vandelar can't even hold on. Nice move from Joe Lewis. And this is a rider who can do this. He can stay away. He's got 7 or so over and over again for this kick.
Yeah, it was smart. He used Vandelar kind of like a slingshot. Grabbed that draft and went past him. But Vandelar, he's grabbing onto his wheel. We got 2 of them. And Morel, my pick, he's sitting in the main pack just behind all them. He's conserving his power. So my guess is we're going to see a big kick from him. If they think that if he thinks the 2 teammates are going to get caught in the front, he's kicking. I bet on this little uphill.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to stay away because that speed is going to come so incredibly high. Watch the power numbers just kick 10, 9, 11 watts per kilogram from some of the riders behind now at this point, and the speeds are going to be absolutely crazy. They've only got a couple of seconds over the top of them as Vandelar continues on with an arrow power up, but fell from Hex here is going to lead things out. Hex now, it looks like Hexagon now with that, perfectly timed with this power up here. That arrow power up's a little bit too early actually here, I think, from the Blake rider here coming out of Denmark, because this anvil power up is going to have a ton of speed for the Hexagon rider. I think Hexagon.
Got the arrow.
Right, you said it. You called it.
Look at this
Perfectly. Morel. There's nobody even in sight. That was
13.
Master class there from Morel. Fell's going to be the next one across, but oh my gosh, what a move.
He had arrow. He had time to spare on that arrow. He could have triggered it a couple seconds early. Just super well timed, super powerful sprint.
Seriously,
and he sat in. He was never in the wind basically that whole race. He had a plan for sure. BL13.
Well, we're jumping across
That's how
here
team racing works.
quickly. We've got 2.1K to go, and I just wanted to jump into the Cat 2 category.
Nice.
Just to make sure that we're doing some coverage across. It's community racing. We want to put some focus in on there. So let's go ahead and reset. We'll get replays of each one of these as well to make sure that we're pulling those in. It does look like toward the front now at this point. We've got 2K to go. A huge group actually in this Cat 2. Let's speak a little bit to that. I mean, really difficult when there's a lot more racers. And we had, I think, 50 plus sign up for this Cat 2 category.
Yeah, I think there was. Right around there. And the Cat 3 has even more.
Yeah, I think Cat 3 had almost 90 riders sign up, actually. So, plenty. It does look like one of the... let's go ahead and move our way back here. It's going to be Camp now making the way. We'll make sure that we're able to grab the sprint here for all these riders. And this is going to give us a good idea. If you are looking to do this Seaside Sprint Z Racing, we have this still for... is it the entirety of the day today, I believe?
It's races every hour for the whole day. And then on the weekends, there's kind of like makeup races where it's every race that happened on the weekdays, it rotates. So you can get these same races every 5 hours. One of these races shows up.
So absolutely awesome. If you do want to check this out, this is one of the funnest sprints to set up for, especially with these specific power-ups. If you want to give it a go, learn race tactics, learn how to draft in a pack and use it correctly, this is one I highly, highly suggest, actually. Now, the kick on the front here, it looks like that is going to be Camps now making a move just ahead of him. I believe that's going to be Broadway. Now, as Broadway from PCH, the Dragons here now looking to close things down in that subweb kit. There comes the Anvils. The Anvil was not the winner in the last one. Is it going to make it happen here in this one? Might be here from the herd, going to be to the front. Now, the Swedish Swifter. I don't know if SRT, it's actually SRT. Dragons, herd to the front. Where's the one last second here? ESRT. Oh, look at that. Look at that kick. Who's coming through here? Is that going to be Sundit? Sundit, I believe. You saw the arrow power up. Crazy power there. Norman across the line from Arrow. Nicely done. That arrow power up, I think, is, like you said, that's going to be the one.
Yeah, I think so. I think the play is to follow the wheels of the Anvils and then trigger that arrow just before you turn left onto the flats and then just go. I think that's the winning move in most of these races. That's going to be my guess.
It's almost like if you have the Anvil power up, you actually end up becoming a lead out man, like almost no matter what. Like you almost don't have a choice unless you have some sort of insane kick that you can perhaps pull off.
It'd be fun to see a team lead out with anvils. Have a couple guys with anvils leading out a guy with an arrow.
Jumping in with Westerland here. This is their final sprint, actually. We'll see if we can actually find the front end of this pack. Westerland hopefully has a good sprint, as now it does look like front end of this one. This is going to be your Cat 3 category. BZR Lions are the ones that are really taking over at the front of this one. And this is the okay, he's going to prove us all wrong, Eric.
There we go. He's going.
We just talked about this.
Harder. Yeah. He's got enough of a gap, though.
He's got a huge gap. I don't think he's getting caught, and that's the Anvil way, I think. I think the Anvil, you have to absolutely punch up and over the top. I mean, they're coming on strong, but it's just not enough.
Yeah, because it's only about a 10-second sprint. That flat section is really short. So, yeah, if you can get a gap like that, the Anvil's great.
See, and now, depending on your ability as a rider, you kind of want to set up differently, don't you? Like, if you know that you don't necessarily have an all-out kick, perhaps that's the way to go to kind of get the gap, use the weight of the Anvil, and power through for a little bit longer than usual for a sprint. And, I mean, he pulled it off right there, as we just saw.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the smart move if you're more of a 30-second power, well, more like a 1 minute plus power rider.
Well, we definitely want to highlight the Cat 4s here. And this is our first female rider that we are jumping in with. This is going to be Allison Thompson from Aeonian. Great to see her, and she's made this lead group. I think there were a couple of ladies actually that had jumped in with this Cat 3, Cat 4s out here today. And I've got a solid group as they make their way over toward the sprint section. Nicely done here from Allison. As TFC are here, but Aeonian, she represents, that's one of the best teams in the world, actually. And
Yeah,
they're also leaders. That's a thing that relates to Zwift Insider, Eric, actually. Aeonian, they're leaders amongst the ladies' highlights that you have. Do you want to speak a little bit to that real quickly?
Yeah, we started, it was almost a year ago now, we launched a page for women's racing. So zwiftinsider.com/WMN, women. And it's all just focused on ladies racing because the goal was to boost participation among the ladies who are racing. And it's really, the heavy lifting hasn't been done by me. It's been done by a team of ladies who organize races and race themselves. And Carla from Aeonian actually is a race organizer, and she's been a big help in that, as well as Becca Neeson, who you've interviewed before, Nathan.
Yeah, I absolutely love what they're doing. You can actually go check out all the stuff about ladies racing over on Zwift Insider. Now, it does look like we've got a couple of attacks going on here coming out of this Cat 4, and it is going to be Lassie Bienenkamp, as well as Brand Kierman. Off the front. These are monster attacks here. They're trying to bring it back here. Absolute suffering through the Essies now as we only have 1.3K to go in this Cat 4 category. But it is going to be a little bit of a gap. If there's an anvil, it is going to influence this. Kirkman here. Nice one from the man out of the Netherlands. Hopefully he has the anvil because we saw it work before. Seems like in this Cat 3, Cat 4s that we have a little bit different situation where they're able to get these breaks, and maybe perhaps, it's just a little bit different, I think, the way that they can run into this. There's perhaps just the ability to break things apart is just a little bit higher chances, and we might see a walkaway with this.
Yeah, more of a speed differential when you've got lower speeds. And even when you're walked away this far, too, if you have the arrow, I would use the arrow, I think, on the descent. Because it's going to help you more because there's more wind hitting you.
That's a good point.
I think in the breakaway like this, you use your either power up, use it on the downhill. But we'll see what Kirkman does.
Yeah, where is the power up? We see an arrow behind here from Edhofer, the German rider. Thomas, I think, is going to make the catch. Kerman, is going to maybe have to settle for second place. Will he have a second kick? He's jumping up into 6 watts per kilogram, but here comes another kick. I think it's going to go head to head, actually, but no, the roll through speed, it's just a little bit too much, and I think Thomas Edhofer is going to take this down. Right to the line, though, almost being caught there by Dwayne Heinos. But that's the situation there for our Cat 4. That's going to be all the categories we're going to cover. I know there's been some questions about covering across categories. We're happy to do that. So as we're finishing up here, we'll take a look at a couple of replays and the results as we get them up here. But Eric, I want to talk about the course. Is it everything you wanted it to be? I mean, you designed this course, and it feels like it's really been a success, Seaside Sprint.
Yeah, I think it makes for good racing. It's not a super attritional course, like Yorkshire or something like that. But I think what you see is repeated attacks and legs that get tired, and people who they don't have that finishing sprint that they needed because of the attacks that happen. So with a team like with BL13, the setup they brought into this, I think it's a perfect course for a team who wants to attack off the front.
Yeah, I'd have to completely agree that this course, when it comes to team tactics, is pretty amazing, actually. I really, really enjoy it because of all the rolling nature of it. But then also, it's not like you there's all this rolling nature to it, but at the same time, you don't have these long, extended climbs, really. So you can take full advantage of all those punchy sections and really use the momentum So there's all this free speed that can be found. And with the addition of a team, you can kind of, like I said, slingshot each other a lot more. And being a circuit race, not a full-on crit race, not a full-on road race, you see the same sections of course. If you do a KISS 100, my first introduction to it, 15 laps, I tried everything you could think of on that course because I'm a pretty aggressive rider. I think every little section of this course, I figured out where you can get something and where you absolutely cannot.
Yeah, that's another thing about this course is there's tons of spots where you can get little advantages, use momentum, use the draft, use steering. It's a really twisty course. So even that final sprint, I saw a lot of riders cutting that corner, that left-hand corner with their steering. It shaves off several meters.
That's also a question I have. Okay, real quickly on opinion there. Lately, I've been trying to steer, and the draft is so strong on attacks that you better be doing a lot more speed than everybody else when you use that. Because if you come out of that draft, it's just like in real life. You're only there for a couple seconds before, if they're going hard, you're going backwards. Like it's a tough one about the timing of steering. At least for me, I've noticed that I don't use it quite as often as I thought I would have been using it in a lot of situations. It's only when I'm fully committed actually to trying to get away and using some speed against other riders.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I've seen people ask, and one that I've thought about trying to figure out how to test, but I haven't figured out a good way to do it yet. Is it more advantageous to sit in the draft around a sharp corner, or to poke yourself out of the draft and cut that corner with steering and then get back into the group? I found that it feels more advantageous to me to cut the corner a lot of times, but I need to get back in the draft pretty quickly. But you know what that is, though? That's a function of the only reason that question is being asked is because there's not enough people steering. If everybody was steering on Zwift, they'd all be cutting those corners. And in fact, did you see that ZRL, this next round of Zwift Racing League, has steering divisions? There's two divisions for steering.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting watching races where everyone's steering, and even the TTT, I assume, everybody will be steering in those. That'll totally change the way the races look.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I wonder how that's going to impact times as well as tactics. May change things up a lot. We'll be watching for that. Well, let's take a quick look at some of the replays here. This was your Cat 1 category. It was Vandelar off the front trying to make things happen here. The question is, where is Morel in here? Like, he is so far back. But that goes to show you, well, doesn't it? What you spoke about, the timing with that aero power up.
Yep. I think that's him right there. Yep. Yeah, he sat in the draft as long as he could, but positioned himself well.
I have to say, I think that the best use of the aero power up is the continuance of speed through this section, actually. That you get a lot of free speed on the downhill, but it's the continuance of speed on the flat section with your punch that might get you the most out of that aero power up. That's my take, personally. Yeah.
Well, I think people tend to trigger the aero too late on that sprint. They don't realize how short the sprint is.
Okay.
And you can actually trigger it a couple seconds before the hard left-hand turn, and really, I mean, if it runs out with a second to go before the sprint, that's not going to slow you down any either. So I would trigger it, while I'm still on the descent, I think, for maximum advantage, because that helps you pick up even more speed on the downhill.
That was Thomas Norman there taking the sprint as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Cat 1 results here. Ike Morel crossed the line here. He had a full 1.1 seconds over Pierre Fell. Jarek Banke followed up by Espen Hordvik. Ronald Vanderlaar was out the front a lot for BL13 for 5th place. Is going to have to settle for that. But his team gets the win after he instigated so much, so I think that's a win across the board for what they were trying to accomplish. Timon Kruger from the Dragons, Charles Thibault, then it's going to be Philip Utley, Magnus Anderson, and Paul Stevens. We just saw the Cat 1 as well as the Cat 2 results. Let's go ahead and take a quick look here at the Cat 2s. Thomas Norman at the top here. Eric, you want to take us through the rest?
Yeah, Carl Murray, Z-Sun got 2nd place, not far behind, just a 0.2 seconds. And we got Tim Byrne, Nath, Andreas Raber, Stefan Brobeck, Patrick Balk, Simon Christensen, Jerome Camps, and Michael Broadway rounding out the top 10 with only a 1.1 second gap. So it was a close pack finish for sure.
In with Cat 3, it will be Manuel Punt for the BZR Lions 6, Jasper Van Bogelen from Team NLB 2, P. Ferdig from the Herd, and it's going to be Chris Verholst for CTZ, Jasper Asper M there for 5th place, Heinz from the Herd, Stian Trimtex from Trimtex Cycling Team, Harmon Reinders, ZWB in 8th place, Ron Go for Club, and Martins Smits, ZWB. And last but not least, our Cat 4 riders. Go ahead for us, Eric, please.
Cat 4, we got Thomas Ethofer taking the win. Just 0.3 seconds behind him, Dave Haynes, Electric Spirit Co. from across the pond. Lassie Beacon Camp, Bram Kirkman, Paul DeGraff, Mike Allison Thompson. Nice work, Allison. And 7th there from Aeonian. A couple seconds behind Allison, Patty McWilliams, Sigurdsson, John Einar, and Zaro. You guys are making me work with these names.
Yeah, welcome.
Cat 4.
welcome to my world. That's how it goes. It's definitely always a learning lesson, that's for sure. So I mean, what a great kickoff here to this 3 weeks of coverage for the Community Racing Festival. You've had a lot of interaction, I think, with the community racing scene throughout, and the next one up for next week is going to be the Herd. That's a team, I think, that has some deep roots in Zwift.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, James Bailey, who, if you've been around Zwift for long, you know James because he heads up so many of the events, including putting in the elbow grease to make this community series work. James comes from the Herd. I mean, he was before he started working for Zwift, he was riding on Zwift with the Herd team, organizing events with them. So yeah, they've got some deep roots. Do some good work.
Herd next week, everybody. If you want to jump in, we are going to be featuring them on Tuesday, October 29th, right here at the same time, same place on Zwift Live, the Richmond roller coaster. Pretty awesome. That's going to be a tough one. That is one of the hardest courses there is in Zwift. That's for sure. I really actually enjoy it because I like a punchy course though. I also want to do a little reminder, and you did do an article on the Zwift World Series monthly racing monument. There's a lot going on around the Zwift World Series, Eric. And we've got qualifier races and elite races that I focus on a ton, but I also race these cool community races that Zwift have going on only on specific weekends. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the way that Zwift has structured the World Series is you have community races that happen, I think it's a week before the elite races do, or maybe
the
a week before the men's.
the week before the elite
qualifier. Oh yeah,
qualifier.
the elite qualifier.
Yeah, so this weekend and then the following week on October 21st. So the 24th to the 27th, we have the community races this weekend that you can race. The Yorkshire double loop is what it's going to be. Yeah. And then we got the qualifiers, Eric.
Yeah, and then a couple weeks after that, you have the actual elite race. So, yeah, the community races are the spot where the elite riders can get a practice race in if you want, but also it's fun for all racers because you're racing a course that hasn't been raced before, and a course that you're going to see the top racers in the world take on in the coming weeks. So, yeah, fun race, and there's been a lot of really good turnout for those races too. Once a month, kind of a monument feel to them.
Well, we've got 3 weeks of community features for the Community Racing Festival. CC will be the week after the Herd, but we also want to give you a quick little reminder that you can still register for the Zwift Racing League. Team registration closes November 11th for this next round number 2. Racing starts on November 12th through December 17th for 6 races in round number 2, which I'm super excited about. And we did see somebody in chat actually saying that they wish that was a points race. That would be a pretty cool points race. That Seaside Sprint. Plenty of places to sprint, that's for sure, over and over again. And collecting some power-ups, definitely a dynamic course, Eric.
Yeah, Yeah, I've done it as a point. I think it was a herd. I think Herd organized it as a points race, and I did it. That was one of the one of the few races I've won. Points race on a
Nice.
course I designed. That's how it works.
Well, quickly, as we're wrapping up here, Eric, I just want to, with the Community Racing Festival, 10 years of Zwift, I just want to ask you, first of all, you ever thought that this was going to be happening? You started a Zwift blog, and now you've got this crazy website you're running. How many articles did you say, and how many members of your club?
There's like 4,400 articles right around there on Zwift Insider right now. And in the club, the Zwift Insider Club has 35,000 or so plus. And we don't really, the club just kind of holds our events. There's chat that goes on too, but it's a place to hold the tiny races and any other special events we do. But no, I never thought when I first launched that blog, I didn't in my wildest dreams.
This wasn't like a master plan. It just kind of like
Not at all.
developed. And yeah, same with like my
No.
laundry room and a green screen. Wasn't a master
Yeah.
plan. It was just like, okay, this is fun. I'm passionate about it. Let's go. And I think that really highlights as well as the community that we're featuring across these next 3 weeks. I also wanted to say, ask you, what are you most excited about from Zwift Insider's perspective that's coming up on Zwift? Upcoming features or community trends that you're currently seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. I'm excited about Zwift Racing Score, even though there's a whole lot of debate going on with it. I love the idea of results-based ranking, and I think it's going to be good. I'm excited about the workout API stuff that's coming up, and more partners coming in. They just announced Exert this week. The idea that we can get an infinite number of workouts basically popped into Zwift, so we can easily do them from within Zwift for the first time ever. That's exciting to me. Also excited. See, am I allowed to talk about this? I think I am.
Uh-oh.
I'm excited because I'm heading over to the Specialized Wind Tunnel tomorrow with some people from Zwift, and we are going to be testing bikes, and those tests are going to affect in-game performance.
Whoo, I don't know. Oh,
Yeah.
that was a bombshell.
Yeah.
I think you just dropped a little bit.
It's gonna depend on what those tests actually reveal. But basically, Zwift is trying to make it a more realistic simulation. So we're going to be testing riders and bikes and looking at numbers. And I probably, in the end, probably what it means is I get to rerun tests on every frame and wheel set.
Oh, God. So you're essentially making more work for yourself is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway, I think that's
exciting.
pretty cool.
All really exciting stuff. We look forward to more and more articles, and I really appreciate you jumping on Zwift Live this week. Hey, everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll be back next week with the Herd. And as always, from Eric and I, right on.
Right.